Welcome everyone, Jamie McIntyre here on behalf of the McIntyre Report on Australian National Review. It's great to have you along tonight. We're going to be talking about what's happening in the US election. Of course, it's been actually quite exciting to have something else on the news other than COVID, I'm sure. US election drama continues. It's a very tight race and it's certainly favouring Biden. Joe Biden is likely going on the votes that are coming in to win. However, this is looking more likely to be dragged out as a legal stoush. Some of the states, swing states in particular, are very close. And in a moment, we'll take a look at that. But first of all, there's a lot of allegations of fraudulent voting. And I talked about this before in recent days. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about it from the Trump campaign and the Trump administration. But is there any validity to these allegations? Well, I think there is, because the process of mail-in votes in particular, mail-in ballots in the US system of elections is just totally open to being rigged. My concern is, and everyone has their different view, but if we looked on election day, generally we'd like to see a clear, decisive win, that on election day you have a winner. You know who the president's going to be. And what I found is that I find it very difficult to see how, in the position Trump was on towards the end of the election day, to not be declared the winner. If we were to reverse the scenario, if you look back, Trump was winning in key swing states. He'd already won Florida, and whoever wins Florida and Pennsylvania generally wins the presidency. He'd already won Florida. He'd already, proven the polls wrong once again, and I did warn about this, and many of those who follow what I've been saying about the US election leading up is that do not trust the polls. The polls seem to be produced by mainstream media, which you can't trust either. Fake mainstream media with their fake news seem to have fake polls. And how do they continue to get it so wrong, like they did with telling us Hillary Clinton was going to win, or in Australia they told us Bill Clinton was going to win, and clearly it didn't happen. And they told us Boris Johnson wouldn't win in the UK either. They continually get it wrong. Now, some of this is because I think they're trying to mislead voters. So they say, well, it's already over. Biden was going to win this. He's already going to win it, like Hillary Clinton had already won it. Then they're trying to do it, I think, in a way so voters don't actually bother voting for, say, Trump or whatever, because they think, oh, it's too late, it's over. That's kind of and even Trump today, in his live conference today, which we'll go to later in this episode, talked about that. We talked about voter oppression, where the mainstream media, particularly left mainstream media, which detests Trump, is very anti-Trump, which is pretty much 80-90% of media these days is left-wing mainstream media that seem to follow the narratives pushed heavily by the likes of George Soros and other billionaire funders. Where he said voter oppression, where they continually say, oh, the election, Biden's winning so much in polls, basically why bother voting if you're Republican? Of course, once again, he proved that wrong. So whoever wins this election, this US election 2020, we want to know one thing: the pollsters were wrong again, and fake mainstream media continually are misleading the public, and their credibility is pretty much done. I agree with Gary Vee said recently, mainstream media death bell has sounded. I think it started being sounded 4 years ago in 2016 when Donald Trump, even before he became president, called him out for fake news. And it's hard to disagree that they are. Once again, they're manipulating. So he let me reverse this scenario. So if you look back to the election afternoon, where Trump now was doing very well, he pretty much won Florida, won the other states, and he was in all the key swing states, pretty much all of them, he was winning. And looking like mathematically pretty much impossible to lose from that position. But here's what's something that happened, which is premature, happened, I don't believe has ever happened in a US election before. In 3 of the Democratic swing states, which Trump was leading, they simply stopped counting the votes and just left. This has never, I believe, has ever happened in US election. Just stopped counting and left. And I believe the reason they did this is that there was so, if it had to continue counting for another half an hour, maybe an hour, Trump would have been declared the winner. Even if mainstream media that detest Trump, don't want to ever count Trump even winning some of the states, even when it's obvious that he has, they would have had to declare Trump the winner. but they just simply stopped counting and went home and allegedly took some of the ballots with them. Now, what's worse with this now, if the Democrats haven't committed voter fraud and haven't rigged this election, then why did those 3 or so Democratic states simply stop the counting? It seems absurd. It seems like, why? But then add what happened after this. The next day we wake up and the voting has continued counting once again. But if you saw on a couple of states, one state, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Wisconsin or Michigan, jumped by 138,000 votes. And we'll show footage of this in just a moment. But it actually, you'll see, I think it was at CNN, even some of the commentators were shocked. Let's just go to that footage right now, and you'll see. Just watch it, and I'll highlight what happens.
All right, hold on a second. No. Look, Joe Biden just took the lead in Wisconsin.
Right. We're getting new information.
We'll go through it.
Pull it all the way out. Votes are coming in right now. Let's pull all the way out to the state of play here, and let's see what's going on, because we're getting real. I know that's what Phil Manning like. We're getting new information in right now, and one of the things you don't get to see is actually what's going on in my head with all the different voices, and that's before I'm on television. But tonight, we just got new information in on Wisconsin, and it has changed the state of play in the state for now. Okay? Right now, Joe Biden is 11,381 votes ahead with 89% estimated reporting. 2 questions. Where did it come from, and what is left? What can we answer?
So let's start with this baseline. Before this information dump came in, Donald Trump was up by 109,000 votes. Now, Joe Biden is up by 11,381.
So you see what happened there is that basically the Biden vote jumped by over 100,000 in a swing state that Trump was getting over 50% of the vote. How is it they magically stopped counting the day before when the U.S. President Trump was likely or should have been, and many people say it was in a mathematical position where he should have been called the winner, where they simply stopped counting in 3 of the key states. But to add insult to injury, the very next day, they just add on 100,000 votes. So where do they find magically 100,000 votes that happen to be 100% for Joe Biden? It has to raise red flags. And why isn't this being investigated? But if you listen to mainstream media, no, there hasn't been an issue. Now, this didn't just happen in one state. This actually happened in at least 2 states. Not to mention that in Arizona, there has been reported footage, and we'll go to some footage in just a moment. Well, let's check out this footage right now. Reported footage of some voters there saying they are being deliberately misled to vote with Sharpies, which we would refer to as felt pens, but deliberately told to do that, but their votes weren't counted. Let's go and look at some of this footage right now.
Explain one more time.
So the people that were in front of me, there were 2 people in front of me that used a Sharpie.
Yes.
That was given to them by the poll workers.
Yes.
It did not read their ballot.
Okay.
And they slid it in there twice. I used a pen.
Yep.
Took their Sharpie and threw it away.
And it read your ballot.
And it read my ballot.
And it read your ballot.
And it read my
So
ballot.
what they're doing is they're telling people to use the Sharpies. That way,
Yes.
those votes aren't counted.
Yes.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yes.
So there was other people that were in there voting with their pens, and they literally went around and they were yanking pens out of their hands.
Yes, they tried to do that to me, and I took their Sharpie and I hid it, because then they said, look for all the Sharpies that are not being used and take the Sharpies back. They had a bowl of pens behind them that they were not giving to people and only giving Sharpies out. SU Polytech earlier, they're like 4 different polling places were doing Sharpies, all in like between Queen Creek and like the edge of Gilbert.
Yep. And those ones are not being counted.
Yes.
They're invalid.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
like, I have proof.
So they're invalidating votes is what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
That's how
I
it
took a
feels like.
picture of my
Okay.
ballot for
And then
Trump.
there was a guy that directly came out and yelled at me.
So you see there, this is in Arizona. Now, Arizona, if you're not aware, was a state that Trump was expected to win. And then even Trump administration was very angry yesterday when Fox News called it for Biden when clearly it was still in play. So you see, but you see the many people in Arizona just can't believe that Trump somehow lost Arizona. He hasn't lost it yet, but it's looking very close, and he's pulling back some of the votes. But the point is, why some of the mainstream media is calling these early when some are being more cautious waiting. But I believe, once again, it's voter oppression. You're basically trying to make out that Biden's got it won, yet when the states that Trump has been well in front and you could say should win, they won't call it. So you can see, if you're a Trump voter, why many Trump voters are disillusioned with not only the political system, but with what's going on when they see their candidate in Trump looking like on election day, late election day, where he even did the speech. And let's go to that speech right now.
I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people. And we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it. We were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. The results tonight have been phenomenal, and we are getting ready. I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good. Such a vote, such a success. The citizens of this country have come out in record numbers. This is a record. There's never been anything like it. To support our incredible movement, we won states that we weren't expected to win. Florida, we didn't win it. We won it by a lot. We won the great state of Ohio. We won Texas. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list. Okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment. And we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won. So I just want to thank.
So you've seen there in a speech where Trump was basically saying that tonight we should be celebrating and effectively opening the champagne, even though Trump doesn't drink himself, where this is what I'm gobsmacked about. You know, I don't care which side of politics you support, Trump, Biden, whoever. The point being is that we should all agree that we want a fair and honest political system. And admittedly, for those who don't get to vote in the American election, we're not Americans, not living there, it still affects all of us around the world. I mean, this is one of probably the most important elections in human history, I would say. And the outcome can have very significant consequences for the future direction of humanity. There's so much at stake in this election. And we've been concerned about certainly the Trump administration has been about potential voter fraud. That's been going to happen. But when we see these things, yet mainstream media is simply not batting an eyelid. So let me change this scenario for you very quickly. Let's just assume for a moment that it was reversed. It wasn't Trump that was close to winning on end of election day, where many say he should have been called the winner, and winning in key swing states, which he wasn't expected to even come close in, like it won in Florida, was winning by a mile in Pennsylvania, still is, by the way, leading in Pennsylvania, but a lot of that vote has been clawed back with Biden, with the late mail-in votes, getting a higher percentage of that, which is expected. But unless, of course, where are these ballots coming from? This is a problem with mail-in votes that's allowed to go on, like in Pennsylvania. The Democrats had it changed and won in court, where up to 9 days later after the election, they can be counting ballots. I mean, could you imagine if this happened in Australia? Like, it's just set up where it's so easily to manipulate, because how do you know where these ballots come from? Are they really checking the postmark? They'll postmark before the election day. You know, the evidence that's coming out of voter fraud is very concerning if you believe in fair and honest elections. See, I'm pretty sure, even though the Trump supporters would be disappointed if Trump lost this election, but if he lost it fair and squarely, then I'm pretty sure they would accept that result. Majority of them would definitely. I can't say the same about the Democrats, though. When the Democrats lost, they still haven't conceded 2016 loss by Hillary Clinton, did you know, by the way. And they were claiming that it was rigged by Russia, etc., which that was found out to not be true. But so let's put this scenario. If the mainstream media, imagine this, if it was the opposite way, where Biden was winning and was winning in swing states on election day and so close to where pretty much mathematically you can't lose, I guarantee you they would have called Biden the winner. Most of the mainstream media stations would have done that. Not only that, imagine for a moment when Biden's pretty much almost about to be declared the winner, or may have even been declared the winner, and Republican states that basically stop the counting of the votes and simply go home, preventing Biden from getting those extra votes that were likely to come in and be declared the winner on election day and have a decisive result. Imagine that. The media, that's all they did, would just go hysterical. It would be out of control, calling voter fraud, Republicans are cheating, trying to rig election. But then imagine on top of that, all of a sudden, where the swing states where Biden was winning, that Trump magically got 138,000 votes, 100% of the next 138,000 votes added to his count to now put him in chance of winning, and in another state as well, another 100,000 votes. It would be absolutely outrage. The Democrat supporters would be tearing up the streets. Or actually, they already have been. Antifa, part of the Democratic organization funded by George Soros, has been tearing up Portland and in Oregon and Seattle and many of the cities in America for months now. But now imagine how crazy they would go. This would be considered one of the greatest voter frauds in human history, and Trump would be considered a dictator and trying to steal an election if it was in reverse. But notice this, because most of the media is left-wing mainstream media, that they simply have said, oh, no, it doesn't seem to be any voter irregularity. It's just Trump trying to use legal stashes to win the election or stop the inevitable. I mean, I can't believe this. Doesn't matter which side of politics you support, you must support a fair and honest election. And because we don't have that, or because a lot of people don't believe that, then there's going to be some major issues, and you could have a President Biden was considered the winner and becomes the next president of the United States. That, you know, this is going to haunt him and his presidency for some time. But a lot of people are saying, well, he won't be president for long, even if he is elected, because of his mental condition, and that the plan all along was Kamala Harris to take over as vice president, become the president. And guess who will become vice president then of the country of the United States of America? A lot of people are suggesting Hillary Clinton would step into the vice presidency and eventually steal the presidency without being elected. Now that's not confirmed, of course, but that's what many people suspect, including myself. Well, let's not get off on a tangent here, because this is going to be a contested election. I don't think Trump should concede, even if Biden does get across the line. Let's go right now to some of these swing states. Let's bring them up on the screen, and let's look at some of these swing states and what's been happening. And you'll see that, and I think the voting has stopped already for today, but Georgia is swinging heavily back in front of towards Biden. Trump had this pretty much in the bag. They're down to less than 1% of voting, so it's almost all the votes are pretty much counted, and Trump is hanging on there by less than 2,000 votes. So what's going to happen there is that it'll be automatic recount. I think when any state is down to a small margin, they do automatic recounts. In other states, Trump is requesting and legally pursuing recounts, obviously because he believes voter fraud has gone on. So Georgia continues the way. I think over 60, as much as 70% of the votes coming in is going Biden's way from these late mail-in ballots. And this is why the Trump administration had issue with these late mail-in ballots, because they're much easier to be rigged. And how do we know they are correct ballots and not more just mysteriously being found, like 138,000 were a few days ago, which has swayed it heavily back towards Biden. If you see my summary that I did a couple of nights ago, let's go to Michigan, which is on the screen there as well. Michigan has already been counted towards Biden, and it's almost less than 1% left voting. Where if you look there, that's over 100, basically 140,000 in front now that Biden is, but that's where the 138,000 magical votes seem to appear from. That was a state that Trump was winning, and I said 2 nights ago, mathematically, with the vote that's left, it seems impossible that he could lose that. Somehow, Biden's been able to manage to win that. Once again, we must ask the voter fraud, or these issues must be raised and investigated, because it just doesn't seem that was ever going to happen. How did that happen? Trump was going to be called the winner of that state. And they both that, Michigan and the other one was Wisconsin. Wisconsin, if you see there as well, voting pretty much is down to less than 1% to count. And Wisconsin was going to Trump's way, and now it's swung back, where it's going to look like where Biden's going to claim that, unless this probably be a recount there. I think the Trump administration is requesting a recount, and so they should. So there's a lot of questions being asked here. As I said, all we're interested in is a fair and honest election. If we have any level of democracy, or the so-called illusion of democracy left in this world, particularly in the United States, then we need this needs to be properly audited. And if there's been any voter fraud, that's certainly to be exposed, because trying to rig an election of this importance, it just simply we can't stand for, no matter what political persuasion you are. If we look at some of the others, Nevada, which is Trump, actually, they don't appear to have done any voting today in Nevada. I'm not sure why that is. They said, I think they're trying to delay it, hoping maybe they will be the last state that will determine who wins. But if Biden gets up in Georgia, which is looking like he's going to overtake Trump there, then it looks like it will be all over before Nevada actually even does their final count. But Nevada, Trump was clawing back. He's only behind now by 8 or 12,000 votes. The other one, which is interesting, Arizona, Trump's clawed back a lot here. They're only up to 90% reporting. There's 10% to come in there, and Trump is clawing back. So Trump could end up winning Arizona, and this is why the Trump administration was very upset with Fox News, who they've been fighting with for some time now, for calling yesterday, I believe, they called Arizona to Biden when it was still clearly in play, and many other TV networks have done the same. If we look at Florida, of course, it's already in the bag for Trump. He won that 51.2% to 47.9%, and a few of the other swing states have gone to Trump already. So the key states we're waiting on is Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is 20 electoral votes up for grabs, a critical one, and Trump is still leading there. 95% of the vote has now been in, so there's 5% left. But Biden, once again, has been closing that gap. That gap is now down to, where we're down to looking at less than 20,000 votes. So the percentage rate that's coming in towards Biden's likely to overtake Trump, possibly, and certainly, as they get to the end of the counting for that. Now, that's, once again, we're assuming that there's been no voter fraud. Let's come back and talk about that just after break. We're going to go to an ad break now and come back and talk about some of the allegations and some of the rumors circulating that there could be a sting operation underway that was set up to see if the Democrats tried to pull off voter fraud, and we'll talk about that and see if there's any validity to those allegations. Let's go to an ad break right now. I'll be back in a moment. Hi, Jamie McIntyre here. I'm excited to launch the McIntyre Report on Australian National Review. We've been a long time coming, and it's a critical time in human history with the US election, 2020, and what's going on with 2020 with COVID, coronavirus, and the assault on our democracies and the removal of civil liberties, and the truly lack of independent media. So ANR, Australian National Review, and ANRnews.com has been around now as a not-for-profit media website for 7 years. It was founded by myself in 2013. And to be a force for good in the world, to expose government and media corruption, because we realize without independent media, the people didn't have a true voice. So if you believe in the importance of independent media, the importance of democracy, the importance of fair and honest elections, then I'm sure you'll love supporting A&R and the McIntyre Report. So we'll be a political commentary show talking about the hard-hitting things, and we will not hold back. We don't answer to any billionaire owners. We don't answer to left-wing extreme media conglomerates that want to dictate and control our narrative. We don't have to abide by official narrative. We will tell you how it is exactly, and we'll go and go into stories that mainstream media, etc., won't touch into well down the track, if ever. So if you want to know the truth and you just want the truth to be told, then you're going to love the McIntyre Report and our A&R Global TV news network, which will grow out to be a 24-hour news channel over the course of next year, with other political hosts coming on board as well. But the first show being launched has already been filmed, the McIntyre Report. I look forward to you joining me and hearing about the truth. It's crazy. It's taken the 21st century for a news network to tell you the truth. I look forward to sharing many episodes with you. Welcome back, folks. Jamie McIntyre here, the McIntyre Report at the Australian National Review, and we have, it's exciting to be able to launch our global news network around the world. We've been talking about this for some time, and obviously for those who've been following us with Australian National Review, anrnews.com is the easiest way to find us. We have been a news site, independent news site, one of the few independent media sites in Australia. We also have global followers. Over 70% of our followers are globally. Over 30% are from America. So we certainly appreciate our global and international followers, and about 30% are from Australia. So with launching of the McIntyre Report, one of the first shows, and we have other hosts that will be hosting other political commentary shows, will be launching soon, and we will build this out to a 24-hour global news network at A&R, Australian National Review, because we think it's very important, as I'm sure many of our listeners do, that we need truly independent media. As I said, mainstream media, as far as the death bell sounded 4 years ago when they were outed by President Trump as fake news, and ever since then we're seeing now in the 2020 election, once again, the manipulation, the bias. Even in Australia, we have a government-funded, taxpayer-funded ABC. And for those Australians, and it's pretty similar probably to England and America, most Australians politically sit centre-right. Centre of politics is slightly right. Yet we have, say, our national broadcaster funded by the taxpayer, which is well over to far left. And most of mainstream media, like five of the largest, of the majority, there's six major media conglomerates that control and own most of the media in the world, which is part of the problem, lack of diversity. But pretty much five of those are all left-wing media. And this is part of the problem we have in the world. Most people sit over here, centre-right, and we have most of the media is over here trying to make up this is where most people fit. And it's just simply not true. Where the only one which has been Fox News and Murdoch has been, as much as I disagree strongly with Murdoch's push on vaccinations and all those sort of things, and we'll talk about that in some other episodes. But if it wasn't for Murdoch and Fox News and Australia's Sky News, and Sky News in Australia has been one of the few channels I give credit to standing up to the COVID fraud and the hyping of COVID deaths and the hyping of test cases and just the nonsense that's going on and the damage that's been caused by this falsified pandemic. And we'll talk about that on some future episodes. But they're over here for the conservative side of politics. So most Australians sit here, centre-right. Yet we have most of the media is pulled all over here, even including ABC in Australia, taxpayer-funded money, and then globally CNN, BBC, etc. Same thing all over here. And this is great. And this is total manipulation of the people. And this is what Trump harps on about, and what a lot of people do. Now, so it doesn't matter what political persuasion, but media would be far better being representative of the people. Most people say, "Oh, just if you're going to be over here, that's fine, but accept that you are, but also have the opposing view that's over here." So we at A&R, yes, we might be considered right-wing media outlet, but we like to think we're centre-right, where the majority of people are, but we're open to listening to views. I mean, I have friends on the left and friends on the right and friends in the middle, so I'm someone that's open to listening to all sorts of views, but we certainly feel in the world today there needs to be more conservative news, and that's why let me mention right now, we do need our support. We're a not-for-profit. Australian National Review has been around since 2013. It's a not-for-profit. So we rely on our listeners and our viewers and supporters to make donations, even as little as $5 a month, or $20 a month. If you donate $20 a month, you go to our A&R, I'll put it on the screen for you, our A&R news site. So just go anrnews.com, and on the home page at the top, you'll see a donate banner. You click on there, you go through to our donate page, and we really appreciate your support, folks, because it's so critical to defending our democracies, to stopping this one world globalist communist agenda that is being pushed fairly heavily on the world, with the Trojan horse of the coronavirus, the COVID-19 being used as a Trojan horse to push in and basically remove our civil liberties around the world. We're seeing this at Melbourne. You can't argue in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. Victoria is a test case for a lot of this. The civil liberties have been removed in so-called guise of a Trojan horse of COVID, human rights abuses, the Victorian police abuses, and this has been happening in other parts of the world too. We need independent media more now than ever to defend our democracies, or what's left of our shattered and battered democracies. So please, we appreciate your support. Go to anrnews.com to follow our news, share our articles, etc. But also, please, if you can donate, even if it's $5 a month, or if you donate $20 a month, I believe they'll give you up to 13 of my ebooks. I'm an author. I've been an author. Wrote my first book in year 2000. What I didn't learn at school, but wish I had. It was a best-selling book back then. But the book that a lot of people are interested in is a book that I wrote only 4 years ago, The Great Vaccine Con, when I used to be a pro-vaxxer, and some very brave doctors and scientists have been busy exposing the fraud of the vaccine industry, sending a lot of information to A&R to highlight that there's major fraud being going on in that industry. So with brave doctors and scientists, I wrote a book called The Great Vaccine Con, which you'll also get if you go to our news site and opt in your email there. They'll give you that for free. Otherwise, you get 13 of my books for free if you donate $20 or more as a donor. Thank you we appreciate your support. Now, what I was going to go back to, there's been allegations in America, these unverified yet, you may have heard the rumors, that Trump was aware before the election, the Trump administration, that the Democrats were likely in swing states such as Pennsylvania in particular, where they were going to try and rig it. So if it was a close election, they were going to try and rig it with voter fraud to ensure Biden won, because they are very desperate to ensure Trump doesn't have another 4-year term. They're still getting over the fact that he won 4 years ago. I think a lot of the Democrats, particularly Hillary Clinton. So there is allegations that there's a sting operation that was put into play. Now, we at A&R, we haven't been able to verify this, but what they're saying basically is that the military had the ballot papers, particularly in swing states, watermarked, and that the ballot papers are watermarked that can be determined that they are accurate ballot papers. Therefore, that if anyone, Republicans or Democrats, and particularly Democrats, that they believe are going to try and commit voter fraud, if they have committed voter fraud and printed off new ballot papers, they would not have the watermarks in. And if they show up when they do these tests that they have used and printed off unofficial ballot papers and used this to sway the election by filling in false ballots and submitting them, like some serious allegations have been raised. And this would explain, if this has happened, why in 2 of the states, one state, 138,000 votes to Biden just jumped up magically, all 100% of those at a time to him, which just doesn't seem likely, mathematically probable or possible when the votes are going 51%, 46%, that sort of stuff. You expect that trend to continue, not just 138,000 votes jump on one and 100,000 in another state. So if this is the case, so as I said, this is unverified. We're going to go to a short video here by a gentleman that was interviewed. And let's just turn to this clip and have a look at this, where he's saying this is not a hoax and this is actually actually valid and real. We'll soon find out, but let's have a quick listen to what he has to say.
Dr. Steve Pachenik, as we're in the middle of this, the election's over. We're now in the stealing process of the election. What are you seeing? What's going through your mind as you're witnessing this gigantic hoax?
This is really a sting operation, contrary to what everybody else said. Trump knew this was happening. I knew this was happening. However, I could not say anything about it. What happened was we watermarked every ballot with what's called the QFS blockchain encryption code. In other words, we know pretty well where every ballot is, where it went. and who has it. So this is not a stolen election. None of this was unexpected. All of this was expected. All of this is part of the sting operation.
Hi, guys. Just to let you know, I've been given consent this morning to tell you something that I've had to keep very, very quiet because I signed an NDA about this, and I can confirm 100% that the blockchain technology was used for the voting on this election alongside the conventional voting system. And Donald Trump won by a complete landslide. I mean, the figures are off the scale. He has all of the hard evidence. This was a sting operation rather than a vote. But I can now tell you that the QFS, the quantum financial system, was actually used, the quantum voting system was actually used for this election. So we actually know the true result. We now have hard evidence. And over the next few days, there will be a number of arrests and a number of indictments and a lot of things that are happening. But I can tell you 100% that the QFS, quantum financial system, was actually used for this election alongside the old system.
So there you have it. It's quite interesting. As I said, we haven't been able to verify it at ANR, and obviously that was a video footage from InfoWars, which is not always considered very credible. But we wanted for you to see what he is saying. He's claiming he is not a hoax, that this information that they will watermark some of these ballots and it's a sting operation underway was set up to see if there was any voter fraud by the Democrats that will be caught out. Of course, the Republican Trump supporters out there are hoping that is the case, and if there's any voter fraud, it will be exposed, and of course Trump would win the election if the voter fraud has been to an extent that it has stole the election. Either way, if that's not true, I think you're going to see a contested election. I can't see why Trump would concede. Some of this voting is going to take on several more days yet, and then obviously with the recounts. So we could be in for quite a long haul before we have an election result, which is probably not what we wanted. Civil unrest with George Soros-funded Antifa, which are part of the, whether Democrats deny it or not, they are part of the Democrat Party, part of the Democrat campaign to try and win this election by tearing up the streets and threatening civil war if basically they don't get their way. Just like many have made allegations that part of COVID's been politicized. Of course, you can't argue that the COVID coronavirus hasn't been politicized. It's a politicized virus and has been used as a Trojan horse to try and remove Trump. And you'll see there's a lot of people that, if they did vote for Biden, one of the big reasons for that, because they believe Biden will do a better job with COVID, because they're believing COVID to be real, despite the fact that the majority of people that have claimed of, a million people around the world that have claimed to have died from COVID, we know have not died of COVID. They died of other comorbidities, and very few people, 6% the CDC said in America, and that requires further investigation. It was 11% in Italy, which was downgraded to 1.2%. So very few people have actually died in actual COVID, despite the fact the fake mainstream media continues to lie, tells us 1 million people that have died, and they continue to say 100,000 people have been tested positive to COVID in America at the leading up to the US election currently, which once again we know also is a lie because there's no proper testing for COVID. The inventor even of the PCR test admitted that it's not a suitable test and not accurate to test. And then once again, any test should have a margin for error. They haven't stated the margin of error. There's probably good reason they haven't stated the margin of error for the PCR test for COVID because the margin of error by some channels have highlighted as high as 80%. So what are they testing for? Clearly, and what is COVID particularly? So we want to talk about that on the next episode, but there's the US election obviously is going to be dragged out for some time, so we will come back to and keep you updated in coming days. But certainly follow our news on ANRnews.com. That's where you'll also be able to watch our ANR Global News Network and the McIntyre Report and the other political commentary host shows that we'll be releasing soon for you, for our viewers. And also we'll be doing a 30-minute comedy satire show of the best memes of the week on ANR because there has certainly been a lot of fodder with Joe Biden leading up in this election, and there'll be plenty more. You'll see some of the memes going around at the moment. I won't be hosting that show. That'll be hosted by Nadine Roberts, a former beauty pageant at Miss Fiji and she will be hosting that show, and that will be quite humorous to watch. Anyhow, it's been great chatting to you tonight on our first episode of the McIntyre Report with the 2020 US election. I look forward to your comments and feedback. On the screen, they'll have, you can text if you want to reach me, even during the shows or after, and we'll talk about anything you want to talk about, or you can email me, Jamie, at AustralianNationalReview.com as well. But remember, ANRnews.com, support us. Please make donations. Independent media now is more important than ever, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.